I think of culture as something that is of people. People make cultures together. And so I don't think culture operates ever autonomously of political situations or of economics. What cultural organizations can do really interests us. And so take the museum as an example. The museum can be a civil society organization that helps people come together around collections, around objects that are made by other people, and that can help us understand each other's points of view a little bit better. The hard thing is for museums to figure out how to stage those conversations and interactions in a way that make the museum truly open to the world, that make its walls porous to the world, so that communities can come into it and partake of it in a way that matters to them and to their daily lives. So that's a big shift we're seeing in museums. Historically, museums have thought of themselves as curating that offer and putting it out there and pushing it out to the public. The new museum, the museum today, has to think about itself as part of the community that it's serving and really listen to what the future users of museums are interested in knowing and learning and doing in the museum. As a private foundation in the United States, you cannot intervene directly in politics. There's actually strong prescription against that. But that doesn't mean that we cannot think about museums and other arts organizations as great potential platforms for bringing people together and talking through differences. In our time, of course, our society is very polarized in an unprecedented way for the last 30 years, I would say. And what museums can do so well is bring their objects, which come from a wide range of cultures, made by people of different religions, different national backgrounds, rural and urban backgrounds, different classes. Those objects can be really good things to speak with in an interesting way that is not so immediately polarizing, because you're talking to people in smaller settings, on a local level, rather than in this highly mediated national or even international level. The question of the restitution of objects to their communities of origin that's been raised so powerfully for European museums for a long time plays out a little differently in the United States, but there are analogous issues. Those issues have mostly to do with Native American collections of Native American objects that often had very live ritual contexts and were taken and collected by early anthropologists and just taken to the American Museum of Natural History and distributed around a whole bunch of what you could call historically white institutions. Happily, for the last 30 years, we've had legislation that mandates certain conditions under which these objects can be restituted, and that often involve tribal communities interacting with the museums in such a way that they sometimes even ask for the objects to be kept there, but to be re-entered under proper ritual conditions, and sometimes perhaps not to be shown if they are actually live power objects of some sort related to ancestors and other ritual communities. I joined my current foundation in 2010, and shortly thereafter Martin Roth became director of the V&A Museum. And in 2011 or so, I read a wonderful speech by him about what it meant for a German national to become the director of one of the most important national institutions in Britain, the first German to do so since World War II, obviously, and probably ever. I was very powerfully taken with what he said about the mission of the V&A Museum in that same interview. And he talked about its original mission coming out of a social progressive vision in the 19th century, that this museum of design and manufacture should be a creative burst of energy, an infusion of energy into the creative industries of Britain then, and that he really felt that if the museum was going to be relevant again, it had to go back to that tradition and think about what it meant to work with creatives today, and creatives of all classes, all nationalities, regardless of ethnic or gender background. I found it an extremely compelling vision, and so I thought, I haven't heard many museum directors talk about this. Museum directors are usually focused on fundraising, on what they need to do to keep their museum flourishing. So I thought, you know what, I'll just call him up And that's what I did. I called him up and he came right on the phone. I thought that was very charming and unusual as well. And out of that, a great friendship, a true friendship developed around issues of museums. He was a rare museum director to think always about the big picture in this wonderful sonorous voice that he had, drawing his schemes and describing how conservation related to research and the public and the audience and so forth. And we made a lot of progress, and in the end I ended up helping him develop this vision for a research institute that would cut across all the departments of the Victoria and Albert Museum, and that also very crucially stood in a very direct relation to the people of London in their various ways. One of my most memorable of many memorable conversations with Martin happened 2 days after Brexit. I happened to be in London and I was visiting him to talk about this shared research institute project. I have never seen him so dejected, and that was unusual because he was a warm and energetic and very well-spoken man, but he truly felt that this was a betrayal of much of what his whole career, his life really, had stood for. And this was before he knew that his life would not be very much longer. He indicated to me that he was thinking about making a move. I asked him to think about this very seriously because I felt he was such an important museum director. And he said, I feel I have to do this because inevitably working in a politically related museum in a national institution, you might get compromised. But he also said that I would not leave if I felt I had not made a significant change and difference here. And he clearly has. It's visible in every aspect of the museum. So even as he wanted to follow his political North Star, he was thinking about his team, about his museum and the communities that he had built.